We now understand that Senator Leahy is in Zoom range. Senator Leahy, do you read me?
Can you hear me?
I hear the voice.
I assume there's a picture coming in here somewhere.
Is there a way to turn up the volume so we can hear Senator Leahy? There he is.
And I'll move this camera around just a little bit.
All right, if you'll
Okay.
take it away, Senator.
Thank you very much. First off, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad you're having these hearings. And Judge, it's great to see you seated there. I had wished 5 years ago we would have seen you seated there for your Supreme Court nomination, but I'm glad you're here today.
Thank you,
I think
Senator.
that the nomination comes at probably the most vulnerable moment in the 151-year history of the department. And you've got to restore the integrity and the respect of the department. No small job, but I can't think of anybody more qualified to do that. I know that a number of people have stated their support of you. One person I know and respect greatly, former FBI Director Judge Free, and I know he sent a letter. And Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, could we have that letter go in the record if you haven't already put it there?
Without objection.
Thank you. A lot of the things have already been covered, and of course, you and I have talked before. Your experience in the Oklahoma City bombing is, anybody who's been a prosecutor knows what a job you did there, and I do appreciate that. We have other things that we have to deal with. The Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act enforcement. We've seen that there's been a scourge of voter suppression, which would be wrong. I don't care who's being suppressed. Unless the Justice Department gets its tools back under the Voting Rights Act, I'm afraid that the right to vote is always going to be at risk, especially for minorities and underserved communities. Do you agree that legislation like the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is urgently needed?
So, Senator, I don't know the specifics of the act, although I certainly knew John Lewis well and was a great admirer. I think that with respect to voting, even in this last election, where a larger percentage of Americans voted than ever before, there was still a huge percentage that did not, at least a third, did not vote. I think it's important that every American have the opportunity to vote. Voting is the central facet, the fulcrum of our democracy. So anything that can, any legislation that will encourage more voting, I strongly support. Specifically, you were averring to the Supreme Court's decision in the Shelby County case, which said that the coverage formula for pre-clearance couldn't be used as unconstitutional because of the then state of the congressional record. But the court indicated that a different and stronger record might support pre-clearance. And I would be in favor of, if I'm confirmed, of working with the committee and the Senate and the House to try and develop that record that would allow that important tool to be used. The department still does have other tools. It has Section 2, which remains in force, as the Supreme Court clearly said in Shelby County, and it prevents interference with voting practices and procedures that interfere with minorities' ability to vote, and it is something that the department has always looked to as an important tool. There are plenty of other tools to increase the ability of Americans to vote. which I would support.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know Senator Lee has already raised this, but please know that Senator Lee and I will both be talking to you about privacy matters. This is not a partisan issue. It's an issue of concern, and we'll do that. Let me ask you another area that was an issue of concern to me. In the Bush administration, the last Bush administration, they put a moratorium on death penalties in federal cases. They gave solid reasons for that. And that moratorium has lasted, or did last, from 2003 during the Bush administration. And then suddenly, in the last 6 months, the Justice Department, under the last president, rushed to execute more people. And this is what's stunning. In 6 months, they've been executed in the past 60 years. That's a matter, many of us feel that was nothing short of being a killing spree. And what worries me, we all know the death penalty is used disproportionately against minorities and the poor. I was a prosecutor. I prosecuted many murder cases. I always opposed the death penalty, and Vermont has gotten rid of theirs. I'd much rather have somebody serve their time for years in a prison cell thinking of what they did wrong. Now I'm joining Senator Durbin and Senator Booker in reintroducing the Federal Death Penalty Act, which would end the federal death penalty. So I'd ask you this, would you go back to what President Bush did and reinstate the federal moratorium, which was lifted just in the last few months by the last administration, reinstated while Senator Durbin, Senator Booker, myself, and others work on the legislation eliminating the death penalty?
Well, as you know, Senator, President Biden is an opponent of the death penalty. I have to say that over those almost 20 years in which the federal death penalty had been paused, I have had a great pause about the death penalty. I am very concerned about the large number of exonerations that have occurred through DNA evidence and otherwise, not only in death penalty convictions, but also in other convictions. I think a terrible thing occurs when somebody is convicted of a crime that they did not commit. And the most terrible thing happens if someone is executed for a crime they did not commit. It's also the case that during this pause, we've seen fewer and fewer death penalty applications anywhere in the country, not only in the federal government, but among the states. And as a consequence, I'm concerned about the increasing almost randomness or arbitrariness of its application when you have so few number of cases. And finally, very importantly, is the other matter that you raised, which is its disparate impact. The data is clear that it has an enormously disparate impact on Black Americans and members of communities of color. And exonerations also, that something like half of the exonerations had to do with Black men. So all of this has given me pause. And I expect that the president will be given direction in this area. If so, I expect it not at all unlikely that we will return to the previous policy.
Thank you. I think my time is probably just about up, but I would also add, as chairman of the Appropriations Committee, I'm going to be talking to you about the Department of Justice and the grants they had on Violence Against Women Act, VOCA grants, other such things. The money has had bipartisan support. again, we got to make sure they are done. Frankly, George, I am very happy you're here, but I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of conversations in the next few years.
Well, I hope that's the case, Senator. I'd be happy to have conversations even if I'm not confirmed, but I certainly prefer them if I am confirmed.
You're going to be confirmed. I'll bet my farm in Vermont on that.
Never ask anybody to bet that, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Leahy.